Hola a todos, feliz Cinco de Mayo. My name is James Bailey. I'm your National Tequila Ambassador for Jose Cuervo, and today I'm thrilled to be partnered alongside with Pay Chen, my mixed partner in crime for Cinco de Mayo. We'll be going over some ways to describe on how tequila is versatile, how sophisticated of a drink tequila is. We'll walk through how to taste tequila if you're a little bit newer to it, and we'll also leave you with some recipes for cocktails to help elevate your Cinco de Mayo. I hope you enjoy learning about our tequilas, our cocktails today, and please ensure to always remember to enjoy responsibly. As well, this partnership wouldn't be possible without Jose Cuervo as well as the LCBO. Pay, take it away.
Thanks, James. I'm so glad to have someone like you who's experienced and an expert, because I don't know a whole lot about tequila. So whether the people who are joining us are like me and know very little, or maybe somewhere in between myself and James, I think there'll be a lot for you to take away from this event. So I'm very excited about it. Also, it is live, so we encourage you to interact with us. You can send in questions for James if you like through the event, through the YouTube chat. I'll just be keeping my eye on a screen that's off to the side a little bit to see if any questions are coming through that you want to ask James as we go along. But we do have a lot to share with you. So I'm very excited to be here because, James, you are the perfect person to walk me through all of this. You sent me the most amazing kit, so I look almost like a pro. So I'm going to get you to... Okay, thank you. By the end of this, I hope to be. So I'm going to get you to walk us through one of the classics.
Absolutely. I think there's no better way to start off our Cinco de Mayo virtually than by making a classic margarita. So first thing we're going to need to do is to actually rim our cocktail glass with lime and salt. But I also want to introduce our product that we're actually going to be using today, which is our Jose Cuervo Tradicional Plata. It's a multi-award winning tequila made from nothing but 100% Blue Weber agave. Fun fact about tequila, it could actually only be produced with one out of over hundreds of different varieties of agave that grow throughout North America as well as Mexico. And so we're using the Tequila Blue Weber agave. And so 100% goes into this. You're going to find that it's got beautiful herbaceous aromas to it, some beautiful spices, some sweet aromas to it. And it just works beautifully within cocktails. So let's start with our margarita.
Okay, I'm excited. Now, James, I know that with tequila, like I looked at the labels of what you'd sent me. So I see different names. So I see like plata, blanco, silver. What is the difference and what does that mean in terms of tequila?
That's a great question. So within tequila, we have our variant, which is blanco and plata. So they interchangeably get used, but a blanco at its base is any tequila that has not gone through any resting process. So it's after distillation, it's sat inside of a non-reactive vessel. It could be stainless steel. It can go directly into glass bottles. Whereas a plata tequila, like our Tradicional, this is rested in oak for a maximum of 2 months. So this allows for us to kind of temper down the acidity and the maybe veracity of the tequila a little bit. It helps elongate the finish, but you'll also still maintain all those beautiful cooked agave aromas. You're still going to get all that herbacity, but with a longer finish, making it really easy to use within cocktails. So plata, from Spanish to English, just translates to silver. So ultimately, a silver and a plata are the same thing, just different languages.
Okay, now I know. All right, so how do we start? You said to rim the glass?
Yeah, so we're going to start by rimming our glass, our margarita glass, with a lime and then rolling it into salt. Myself, personally, I don't like having a really large, heavy rim. I like to make sure that I've just got a little bit so that way I could continue tasting. If you find you've got too much salt, just give the glass a tap on the bottom to remove any excess, so that way you don't have a big chunk of salt when you're tasting your cocktail. The next thing for us to do is to prep our cocktail shaker. So we've got our cheater tin right here, and we're going to start off with our least expensive ingredients. I always like kind of working our way from the base and then going over towards our spirit base. So we're going to start off with 1 ounce of lime juice.
You've kindly squeezed my limes for me. You've saved me
a little
bit of work.
I figured I needed to get the work in. I've just had too many tacos today, so I'm like, let's put in the hard work for myself to make sure that I squeeze all the limes.
Thank you very much.
No worries. So we're going to add our 1 ounce of lime juice inside of our cocktail shaker. The next thing we're going to do is our orange liqueur. So we're going to follow up with 1 ounce of orange liqueur. And then lastly, we're going to add 1 ounce of our Jose Cuervo Tradicional Plata. So the beautiful thing about this tequila, it's an original recipe that dates back to 1795. So this is a tequila that when we created it, when tequila originated back in 1795, Jose Cuervo tried to ensure that we continue to the original recipe. So over 11 generations, this recipe hasn't changed. So over 225 years now of this beautiful liquid. So making it perfect for margaritas.
Well, hey, if it's not broke,
Don't fix it.
Why fix it? Obviously, it's perfect if you haven't had to change anything about it for so many years.
Exactly. So next thing we're going to do is add our ice into our cocktail shaker.
Okay.
And we're going to seal our tin.
Okay. Any tricks to this?
Yeah, so if you do have a really brand new shaker tin like we both do today, you might find it's a little difficult to open up. I've had some struggles myself. There's a little gap that you'll see right here. That's the easiest way to open it up after shaking it. And when we're shaking our cocktail, we want to make sure to get as much aeration and to chill it as quickly as possible. Essentially, once it's too cold to hold, your cocktail shaker is ready. So let's give it a good hard shake.
Okay.
All right. See, I'm already having some difficulty opening.
Yep.
Perfect.
Wait.
So once we're able to get it open,
yes, keep going.
having that difficulty, it might be easier just on that side, right there. Just give it a little squeeze.
What am I squeezing? The little gap?
I just push the cheater tin, the small tin, towards the gap,
Yes.
and that helps open it up.
I hear what you're saying, and I understand, and I've got it.
Perfect. And now this is a cocktail that I personally like to open strain. So I don't like to actually use a fine strainer for it because I want those bits of ice and those ice crystals inside of my cocktail. So we're just going to open strain it into our glass. And then we're going to garnish it with a lime wedge.
James, here's a question. Not everyone is a mixologist at home. So Sarah asked, what if we don't have a cocktail shaker? How can we make our perfect margarita?
That's an awesome question. So if you don't have a cocktail shaker at home, or if you have a protein shaker or an energy drink shaker, or even a tight lid Tupperware, those work really, really well for actually shaking cocktails. So you'll still get the aeration. God. You'll get the dilution there.
I never knew what to do with my protein shaker.
Right? It's like, I try not to, I use it for cocktails.
I never thought about crossing over from the protein to the margarita.
Well, if you throw an egg white in there, you've got a sour and you've got 6 grams of protein there. So it's a healthy cocktail.
Goodness. You've totally blown my mind.
So here we go.
That was easy.
Yeah. So let's give it a little taste.
Mm. Oh, that's nice.
And refreshing.
That was a lot of salt on my rim.
Makes you want to go back for another sip.
Yeah, it really does. Now, what kind of food would you pair with this? I mean, I kind of have an idea of what I know goes really well with margaritas, but in your professional opinion.
In all honesty, I think that and this is not to be biased, but I think margaritas go with anything, and I think that's probably why the margarita is one of the most widely ordered cocktails in the world. But when I'm actually thinking about what I want to pair along with my margarita, I think of rich, decadent kind of spice and kind of really, really flavorful dishes. I think like an al pastor taco works really, really well with it. So if you've got the contrast of the grilled pineapple, so that sweetness, you've got the roast pork that's been marinated in achiote, you have chilies, you have citrus incorporated into that. It just really has a nice contrasting flavor to go along with the vibrancy and the acidity and the freshness of a margarita. But if you do want a non-meat alternative, for Cinco de Mayo, I think nothing's more perfect than guacamole. You have the fattiness and the richness of an avocado with the acidity and the vibrancy of margarita. They really kind of complement each other. And so every time you go back, it feels like it's a brand new bite because it cleanses your palate.
Oh, I love it. I could eat a whole bowl of guacamole right now. So this is like this fantastic pair. And I also think like with the salt and the lime that is in both the margarita and the guacamole, it just makes sense that it would go so well together.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially if you've got like crunchy chips that are salty as well too. You just want to keep going back for another refreshing sip every single time.
Okay, well, I'll have to put this to the side for now because we have others. Now, when we're talking about tasting tequila, because that is something that I don't know that I've ever done it properly other than, when I just take a sip of tequila. So what are your tips?
Well, my first question, I know it's kind of a shot in the dark, but Pay, have you ever smelt cooked agave before?
Oh, it's in my oven right now. No, just kidding. No. never had that opportunity.
We casually have them always in Toronto.
Yeah, I mean,
But
just
with-
wait, it's baking.
With cooked agave, and this is something for our viewers at home as well too, if they haven't had the opportunity to actually try cooked agave, this is a little exercise. I like to associate that aroma every time I'm tasting tequilas. So this is something that just kind of resets my palate and kind of gets me warmed up for tasting tequila. So what I like to do is I like to get my tequila and add a couple droplets into the palm of my hand. So just like an eyedropper amount. This, for those at home, will really help associate that aroma of what cooked agave is like. This is something that I learned from the master blenders and master distillers back in Jalisco at La Rojena, our distillery. And so doing this, it does two things. It helps us remove any perfumes from our hands. So let's say, for instance, we had lotion, or if we were just washed our hands, anything that might influence our tasting, this helps remove that. Secondly, if you cup your hands and smell them, it should smell like roasted squash or like roasted sweet potato.
Okay.
It's a really, really delicate, lovely aroma. And that's cooked
light.
agave. Very light, yeah. And this is cooked agave. This is exactly what we look for when I say it smells of cooked agave, it tastes of cooked agave. This is the aroma we try and associate every single time. So let's pour ourselves a little glass of tequila to walk through a little tasting on how to taste our tequilas.
Okay, now does it matter what kind of glass we use?
It does help. If you do have, let's say, for instance, a champagne flute, if you have a very narrow wine glass, like a Riesling glass or something like that, that does really help. I've got right here a tequila glass. These are specially crafted just for smelling tequilas. If you have a Glencairn, that would work well for like whiskey. But at the end of the day, any kind of glass, as long as you're getting the aroma up to your nose.
Okay.
So first thing I like to do is to actually temper our palate. I don't want to dive right into smelling it because evaporating alcohol can be quite aggressive on our palate. So what I want us to do is to place our nose in the center of the glass and actually keep our mouth open. And we're going to inhale through our mouth rather than with our nose. So doing so, you feel like you're tasting it almost without actually tasting it. Do you get that?
I understand what you're saying. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like, it's very delicate, whereas opposed to if we were to smell directly, at times it causes people's head to kind of bounce back and it's just like, wow, that's really, really aggressive. This is just warming us up for it. The next step for us to do is to actually take un besito. So in Spanish, it means a little kiss or a little sip of tequila. So let's have a little sip of tequila and just let it hit your palate and roll it around for about 5 seconds. So it helps cleanse our palate. You should feel like the sides of your palate are really starting to water. You get that nice acidity. It's cleansed your palate as well too. It's not overly aggressive, but this is just helping us warm up to actually tasting tequila.
James, someone had a question also.
Yeah.
Do you suggest tasting neat with ice?
I recommend all tequilas neat when we're tasting them. If you were to lower the temperature of the tequila, it does cause the flavor to dull a little bit. So you don't get as much aroma as if you were to, it just slows it down. It slows down the flavor molecules. Whereas opposed to if it's at room temperature and we really get to play with it, it's tequila, we're meant to have fun with this spirit. This really helps open up the aromas and really gets the bouquet to our nose.
All right,
so
great.
Next thing for us to do
Yes.
is to smell in 3 different areas within our glass. So tequila is really cool and spirits are really cool. The fact that where you smell really affects the aroma, especially if the glass is made for that. So if you smell right where we sipped from, this is where you get your primary aromas. These are aromas that are indicative to the plant itself, so the agave, how it was cooked, the terroir even, the area, the soil. This is where you get those aromas from that. In the center of the glass where we smell, this is where you get your secondary aromas. So these could be indicators of the distillation process, of the fermentation process. So aromas of fruit, aromas of herbs and botanicals really come through in the center of the glass. Opposite from where we drink, this is where we get our tertiary aromas. Tertiary aromas are anything from barrel aging. This is something with a plata, it doesn't sit as long in oak as, let's say, for instance, a reposado or an anejo. It might be a bit more delicate, but when we go into tasting our other spirits, you really start noticing it. So this is something just play around with the actual tequila in the glass. And as you move it back and forth, you really start to sense different aromas from it.
I mean, I don't know how to pick out all the aromas like you do, but I understand this process and how you would
It definitely comes with practice. It was something that myself, I just continuously keep trying to smell things at the grocery store, not right now, but it definitely does help when you associate, if you cut a fresh lime and you smell that, that's an aroma that I pick from here, or the zest of lime. I get black pepper as well off of the nose from this one. You get some really nice sweet aromas. And when you taste it on the palate, it's not overly aggressive. It's assertive, but it's not harsh, which makes it really great for mixing in cocktails.
Perfect. All right. So what next? Is this when we're making your paloma?
Yeah, so this is where we get into one of my favorites. So one thing about palomas is a lot of people think of the margarita as the national cocktail of Mexico, when in actuality it's a paloma. So one thing I love about tequila is, I digress a little bit, but is how deep in historic roots it actually is. So if you were to think about it, the spirit itself has evolved over years, from in 1000 BC when Aztecs were drinking fermented agave beverages for ceremony, to 1400 AD when the Spanish brought over distillation equipment to make vino de mezcal, which was the first form of tequila, so to speak, to 1795 when the first legal recipe of tequila was created. So being able to transfer all that to now actually having a signature cocktail that resembles Mexico, I think is something that's spectacular within tequila. It's also something that's so versatile year round. So just like when we were making our margarita, we're going to start by rimming the glass. If you don't care for a salt rim, this is a great cocktail that you could just add a little pinch of salt into the actual cocktail, and it just helps intensify those flavors of the grapefruit, of the tequila. Think of it like a baker telling you to add some salt into your chocolate, just to intensify those flavors. So very similar thing, but I myself do like a rim of salt on my cocktails.
Okay, I'm just going to copy you. Now, is there a particular glass that you should serve a paloma in? Because I know that we are both using highball glasses.
A great question. In my experience, whatever holds the liquid is a great glass to enjoy a paloma in. I really like it in a highball. The reason why you want something narrow for effervescent cocktails is it allows, or it doesn't allow the bubbles to, or the carbonation to release as quickly. So the more narrow the glass is, the bubbles won't dissipate. If you were to ever look at like a champagne flute, that's why champagne flutes are narrow, whereas opposed to if you were to have a champagne coupe, it'll go flat quite quickly. So having something narrow really preserves those bubbles inside the cocktail.
Oh, that's a great tip. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Perfect. So we're going to start off with our lime juice. So we're going to start with 1 ounce of lime juice inside of this cocktail.
Okay.
Sorry, 3/4 of an ounce.
3/4 of an ounce. And again, we're doing, as you mentioned, which is like the cheaper ingredients first.
Exactly, yeah. We don't want to lose out on our precious spirits and our precious base. So I'm just squeezing it right into the glass. And then we're going to be adding 1 full ounce of syrup. Reason being is because we're adding grapefruit into this cocktail. So the grapefruit is really going to help balance out that acidity inside. So we'll add 1 ounce of syrup.
So this is simple syrup, which is dead simple to make.
Yeah, absolutely. No pun intended. It's just 1 part sugar to 1 part warm water. So you could literally just get a cup of sugar, a cup of hot water, stir it until the sugar's dissolved, and you're set. If you don't want to boil the water or bring the water up to temperature, you could just keep stirring until it's actually all dissolved. But that's simple.
It's just so much effort.
So much more effort, yeah. Then we'll add 4 ounces of our grapefruit juice into our cocktail glass.
Okay.
And not lastly, but second lastly, actually, we're going to be using one of my favorite tequilas, our Jose Cuervo Tradicional Reposado. And we're going to add 1.5 ounces.
And how much are we putting in? Okay.
1.5 ounces. Next thing for us to do is to add some ice into our cocktail glass. And then top it off with some mineral water.
So something bubbly.
Something bubbly, yeah.
Okay.
And we'll give it a gentle stir because we don't want to lose those bubbles. We want to keep this tall, refreshing, and effervescent through the whole entire time. So give it a gentle little stir.
So this is perfect if you don't have a cocktail shaker.
Absolutely. This is something that I absolutely love for just on a regular basis when I'm making a quick cocktail. I love having grapefruit around. Like I said, in the wintertime, grapefruit's at its absolute prime. That's when the flavor really, really comes through. But this is also something super refreshing for the summertime. In the fall and in the spring, you can infuse it with spices or even botanicals to really make it seasonal. So it's such a versatile cocktail that I absolutely love it. And we'll just garnish it with a lime wedge.
And that's it?
Yeah, that's it.
Look at us.
That's our Paloma.
Cocktail pros.
That looks
Cheers.
beautiful. Salud.
Thank you. I love fresh citrus. Now, I know, James, it's very important for you to use fresh fruit. So it's not the stuff that you buy, you know, in the little squeezy container. You really want fresh lime juice. You want the fresh grapefruit. I mean, in a pinch, could we use like a grapefruit juice that we, you know, bought in a carton?
Yeah, in a pinch, you can definitely use it. In a pinch, I actually like using grapefruit soda. So if you're able to find grapefruit soda, that's a really quick, easy fix if you don't have grapefruit available, or if you notice that they're not ripe enough or that they're overripe. I think in a pinch, grapefruit soda and a little bit of lime juice and your tequila makes a really quick and fast Paloma. I call it a Paloma sencillo, or a simple Paloma.
Because it just can be simpler.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything about it is already so simple, but if you need to, you can make it even simpler. Now let's talk a bit about the tequila that you used, because it was different than the first one we used for the margarita.
Yes. So this is our Jose Cuervo traditional reposado. This is a staple at my home bar. It's one that I absolutely love. So as I mentioned earlier with our traditionals, we've kept the recipe dating back to 1795. So it's an over 200-year-old recipe. A reposado differs from a plata, as a plata I mentioned is rested in oak for only up to 2 months. After that 2-month period, it then becomes a reposado. And a reposado can sit in oak for a minimum of 2 months up to 12 months. So having it in oak, as you can see, it's got a little bit of a different color to it. You're going to have a golden hue to the tequila. This is all from actual contact with the oak. It really pulls through oak particles. It really helps emphasize the spice aroma that you get from it. So rather than those beautiful herbs, you're getting some really lush spices. So think about baking spices, winter spices, vanilla, some light caramels in there as well too. Rather than that bright lime, you're going to get sweeter orange zest. So this is something for, let's say, a whiskey drinker who's trying to work their way into agave spirits. This is something that I absolutely love to give them. It works really well in mixed cocktails like we did in the Paloma. It works really well in old fashions, sipping neat. It's just such a versatile spirit, and it works really, really well when it comes down to bold fruit flavors. So grapefruit, watermelon, berries. I just love using it with pretty much everything.
Well, you mentioned how much you love using it with all kinds of different fruits. And then as we get into summertime, there's certain fruits that I think of that as being, you know, extra refreshing, also extra pretty. It's always nice to have a really colorful cocktail. And I know you had sent me some watermelon, because we're going to do something with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to make a watermelon margarita. And I think that as an easy way to infuse into a cocktail flavors is just using fresh fruit into it. So we're going to start off just like how we did before by rimming our glass with a lime and then rolling it in salt.
So now we're using like a margarita glass or like a rock glass?
Yeah, a rock glass works perfectly with it. You can do it in a coupe if you want to serve it up, or if you want to serve it neat without ice. Considering the fact that it's Cinco de Mayo, I think having it on ice just makes it a little bit cooler. It's a little bit more refreshing, makes me feel like it's summer coming around the corner. So we've got our rimmed glass. We're actually going to add ice into this glass right now, just to kind of help chill it down. Then we're going to get our...
This is a different process than the first margarita.
Yeah, a little different. We're just adding the ice in first. We're adding an extra step because we are going to fine strain this cocktail.
All right.
So the next thing for us to do is to add some chunks of watermelon inside of our shaker tin. Now you can muddle the fruit, but I think with delicate fruit like watermelon and, like, for instance, if you're using botanicals like thyme or mint inside of a cocktail, by just shaking it is enough to actually break up and infuse those flavors into the cocktail, so you don't have to add too much extra work in. Of simple syrup.
How much simple syrup? Say that again. 1 ounce?
1 ounce.
All right.
And then we'll add in 1 ounce of lime juice.
It's sweet and sour.
Yeah. This is just something that gets you ready for the summertime.
I'm ready for it. Like, I've been ready for weeks. The weather
isn't helping.
Yeah, it's not cooperating, but I'm physically myself very ready for this.
Oh, as am I. ready for more margaritas on the beach, and we're set.
Yes, one day.
Perfect. So we'll add in our reposado now. So we're going to add in an ounce and a half of our repo. And our ice, and then we'll just give it a nice hard shake. Pay, how are your elbows feeling after shaking these?
I feel really strong.
Good.
So we're putting ice into the shaker. We're leaving the ice that's in the glass.
Yes. Yeah. So considering that we're actually going to strain this cocktail, we're not going to open pour it. We want to make sure that we're actually getting all the pulp out of this cocktail.
Okay.
Perfect.
Are we shaking now?
Give it a good hard shake. Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. So you should have this beautiful pink color within the cocktail now, and we're going to give that a nice fine strain over the ice. And as you can see how frothy it is as well too, we're just straining out all that pulp really gives a silky texture to our cocktail.
Ah, James. I was overly ambitious. No.
I'm sorry. And then lastly, we're just going to garnish it with a slice of watermelon.
Beautiful. I may enjoy this later.
No worries.
It'll stay nicely chilled in my shaker glass. We do have another question. Which of the two, Christine is asking, which of the two tequilas is the better sipping tequila? If you were to choose one of those two.
Ooh, that's a great question. I love all tequila for sipping. Myself,
it's hard,
as somebody,
right?
Yeah, it's really hard to choose. It's like choosing your favorite puppy. I think with the tequilas, I really enjoy drinking platas because I think that's where you get the purest form of the agave itself. A lot of people really enjoy drinking the darker versions of tequila or the more aged tequilas just because they are a little bit more smooth. You have more tannins that have integrated into the tequila, allowing it to not be so sharp in acidity and really have a long finish. But I really like tasting the agave flavor myself. So that's kind of like my litmus when I'm figuring out what to use with cocktails. I enjoy this one. This is my go-to when it comes down to mixing cocktails, the reposado. So sipping, I really enjoy platas on the rocks and then repos mixed into cocktails.
I just want you to know that I have successfully opened my cocktail shaker.
Oh, and that's a beautiful color too, Pay.
Obviously, I just need a little more arm work. We do have another question. Someone's asking if you have any suggestions for low sugar or sugar-free cocktail recipes since we have been using a simple syrup in some of these cocktails.
That is awesome. I actually fairly recently removed sugar from my diet for a long period of time. And I found
Why
that
would you do that?
Having different cocktails, I found that there was a lot of sugar being integrated and I wasn't as active as I used to be. So I found that actually using monk fruit as a sweetener worked really well as a substitute for simple syrup. So treat it the exact same as you're making a simple syrup, but use monk fruit. So it keeps it very low sugar, very low carb as well. But if you want to have a really nice cocktail that doesn't have as much sugar, I would stick with the classic margarita because there's not as much sugar in an orange liqueur as there is inside of a simple syrup.
Okay, very good tip. Because okay. So for anyone who is looking to cut back on the sugar that they have in their cocktails, that's a great suggestion. All right. Yeah. So did you already try yours?
I haven't tried. I was waiting for you.
Oh, thanks. You could have waited forever, actually.
That's okay.
Oh my gosh, that is so nice.
So refreshing. So refreshing.
Oh, yeah, it's beautiful. And it's not at all, despite the lime juice, like it's not sour. It's got like that tiny little bit of tartness.
Perfect balance within it as well too. And I think with the watermelon just really adding a little extra layer of flavor, and with our margarita, it's a great way to easily infuse our cocktails.
I can't wait for when we actually have nice weather and we can sit outside and enjoy a nice watermelon margarita.
Absolutely.
We've got another question from Vimal. What about a smoky tequila for drinks? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So that's great. That's a great point. So the more we actually age our tequila, the more smoky aromas we're going to perceive. So whenever we age a tequila or we rest a tequila in barrel, they're always rested in charred barrels. So that charring that's on the inside of the barrel will really impart a smoky aroma or a smoky appeal into our tequilas. But if you're looking for something that's got a little bit more intensity to it, I might look at trying a mezcal as well too. So creyente mezcal is one of my favorites that does use only mesquite wood for it and really imparts a lot of that smoke. So think of like Texas barbecue. But the older tequilas that you have, like for instance, the Reserva de la Familia that we'll dive into, you'll note a little bit more of a smoky aroma inside that.
Ah, perfect segue, because you sent me this beautiful bottle and I know that it's extra special. So do you want to tell me what this is?
This is, so the Reserva de la Familia Extra Anejo is one of my all-time favorites. This is a multiple award-winning tequila that's really set precedence for our family of tequilas. For a long period of time, this was actually only reserved for family and friends who visit our hacienda. And we actually use a specific plot or a specific part of our estate that has really, really lush volcanic soil, a lot of minerality. We wait for the agaves to actually reach over a decade before we start harvesting them to ensure that we have a concentration of sugar back inside the piña, or the bulb is what we call it. So that way we get the smoothest and the sweetest taste when we're actually distilling our liquid. So the master blenders do wait for about 3 years minimum before we actually start taking the tequila out of barrels. So all extra añejos are aged for a minimum of 3 years, as long as the master blenders see fit. And that really helps influence a lot of, I would say, complex aromas. You get a lot of elongated finish, really, really intense flavors, but it also ultimately leaves a really beautiful smoothness to the tequila. A lot more tannins integrated into it, leaving a really long finish.
Can we also just talk about how it's packaged? It comes in this beautiful box. So this
Absolutely.
is what I received. And it's absolutely stunning as a gift. And I mean, we've got Mother's Day coming up this weekend, Father's Day, there's, graduation for, some university students. This is a really beautiful gift idea.
It is. And one thing that I think is really special with this Reserva de la Familia is every single box is a different local Mexican artist. So the Cuervo family actually commissions a different artist every single year to design our packaging for it, which I think is really special. So every November we actually launch our artist launch, so to speak, for the bottle and the box. And I think it's really beautiful just to see how the packaging comes through with this one. So each one is a collector piece.
It is a collector's item. Okay, so what do you, how would you suggest that we enjoy this?
So the signature serve for this one, I think, is best served neat. I think just to pay homage to the master distillers and the master blenders, I don't think mixing it in cocktail does it justice. I think actually enjoying it on its own is the best way to enjoy the Reserva de la Familia. As you can see, every single bottle is hand blown and hand dipped in wax as well too. So it's something that's just extra special. They go over and beyond with the packaging on this one, and with the quality you'll see very shortly inside the glass.
So I'm just going to use a wine glass. That's just what I happen to have. I don't have every kind of glass available.
No worries. That's why I try not to move too quickly in my apartment. I'll knock over all the glassware.
I can just imagine.
So here we have our Reserva de la Familia. Smelling it right on the nose, you really get all those beautiful intensities of the spices. You get really the oak. The agave is not as present as when we were trying it with the plata, but this is something that's super lush and super luxurious. So when we taste it, and this is one that I would really love to do a full tasting with you on it, so you can actually see how it changes in the glass in those 3 different areas we were talking about. So when we sip it, it's just so smooth. It's just got beautiful chocolate flavors. You've got all those caramel aromas. You've got those beautiful spices. You've got the intensity from the oak as well too. Really long finish. I'm still tasting it as we're speaking right now. And when we smell it, when we actually get to play with this tequila in the glass, you start to really smell different aromas. So when you smell it from the lip, it's quite sweet on the lip of the glass. And then diving into the center, you actually get more dried fruits and maybe more honey aromas to it. And then opposite of the glass is where we're really going to notice all that oak aroma. So like tons of vanilla, you get those oak and maybe cedar notes and really dark burnt toffee caramel aromas.
What do you suggest tasting this with?
Great way, great segue into like what to pair. I absolutely love this one with chocolate. I think any chocolate that's 65% to maybe 75% works beautifully with it. So now that we've actually had a taste, what I'm going to ask you is to try a little piece of chocolate. If you have it,
you don't have to ask me twice. Try chocolate.
So take a tiny little bite, and then we'll take a sip afterwards and see how it actually pairs with each other. every time I taste the two of them together, it always makes it feel like I'm eating a chocolate covered strawberry. You really get those beautiful fruits that come through. Your mouth really starts salivating, and you get that chocolate, obviously, from the palate. But you also get that bitterness that's coming from the cacao. So I think it's just a beautiful pair. This is what I've probably had maybe about 10 tacos today. So this is going to be my digestive for the evening. So this is just to help settle everything. It's something that I love to have after dinner as well, too.
You really did Cinco de Mayo full speed.
That's why there's a corset underneath this blazer.
James, we just have a few more questions. I want to make sure that people get to ask them.
Of course.
When you were talking about cutting back on sugar, it seems that there are a few other people who are curious about that. So Carrie's asking if agave syrup is an option.
Agave syrup is an option. So agave syrup's really excellent because you don't need that much of it to impact the sweetness in a cocktail. It's got enough viscosity in the actual syrup itself that it lends the weight when you're mixing it in a drink. But also, they do say that agave nectar is
Oh, James, I think you just froze.
Oh,
And then I heard you come back. So you just froze a little bit when you're talking about agave nectar. We just lost the last few seconds.
My
of what you were
apologies.
saying.
So agave nectar is, if you were to have the same amount of agave nectar in a cocktail, it's about 3 times sweeter than simple syrup. So you need a lot less agave nectar, and it would actually, it wouldn't be as difficult or as intense.
Okay, so definitely don't do a 1-to-1 ratio because agave nectar.
No, if you were making actually an agave syrup at home, I might recommend to dilute the agave. So I would do about 2 parts agave to 1 part hot water, and you'll end up having something that's a little less viscous, and it works really well into the cocktails.
Okay, and we've got another question. Jamie is asking what proportion monk fruit to water for that simple syrup alternative that you had mentioned a few minutes earlier, and then do you strain it?
So I actually heat up the water a little bit first, and then I'll use equal parts hot water to monk fruit, just like we would do with a simple syrup. And you would need less monk fruit syrup than you would need a simple syrup. So if you're using an ounce of simple syrup in a cocktail, I might use half an ounce of monk fruit. And it stays shelf stable as well too. So if you keep it in the fridge, it might crystallize, but just warm it back up and you'll be set and ready to go.
Okay, so lots of alternatives for people who are looking for something other than simple syrup, but still want a little bit of that sweetness in there. Did we taste everything that you wanted us to taste for this?
I think so. I think you get all those beautiful aromas from the actual agave. You still get all those the oak notes. So you still get those caramels, those burnt toffee, and the spices. What do you think about the tequila?
I think it's really nice. I'm also really amazed at the difference in color. So when I look at this, for example, and then compare it to the first tequila we used, which was the plata, which is so incredibly clear, it's quite amazing to see the change. And then I look at like the slightly straw color from the reposado, and it's really interesting to see how the color evolves as it's been aged.
Yeah, the more contact that the spirit actually has with the oak, especially depending on the charring level. So if we have more of a char, like I said earlier, you'll notice that there's a bit of a smokiness inside of this extra anejo. So the more actual char that's on the barrel, the more color it's going to impart. Think about like black tea. The more you actually steep the tea, the darker it's going to get.
James, this has been fantastic. I've learned a lot. I'm hoping that everyone who's joined us has as well. Thank you for the questions. I'm just going to take one quick peek, make sure I haven't missed too much. But you've definitely helped out a lot of the viewers as well, so that they know how to make their perfect paloma or margarita, have their own tequila tasting. So thank you everyone for joining us. If there was something that you missed, or perhaps you want to rewatch this so that you can make the cocktails along with James, of course, you can find it on the LCBO's YouTube channel. For information about the products that we have talked about and used today, it's actually in the description of the event. And you, of course, can purchase these in store or online, lcbo.com. We do remind you to enjoy responsibly, but hopefully we've given you some inspiration for the warmer weather that is definitely coming our way, and perhaps some gifting or celebration ideas for the holidays that are coming up in the next few weeks and months. James, this has been really wonderful. Thank you so much for walking me through all of this.
Hey, thank you for joining me, and thanks for being a great champ with our tequila.
Well, we hope everyone had a great time. Thank you again. And please check out the other events that the LCBO is offering. Again, lcbo.com. Have a great afternoon. If you're joining us from the West Coast, have a great evening. If you're further along the East Coast, thank you again. And we'll see you soon.
Salud. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Happy Cinco de Mayo.